Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 23 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 25 today for the Qatar Grand Prix in Season 2. Round number 2, if you guys did miss the opening round of this season, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one at the Australian Grand Prix. It was a pretty explosive start to the season, quite literally, for us, as our engine exploded just as it was getting pretty juicy. It seems like the engine failures have some awful timing. Quite literally, I think we're on to maybe challenging for the lead with an undercut on the leaders of Lando Norris, Verstappen, Sainz, and then the turbocharger failed us. So we got 0 points on the board. Daniel Ricciardo, our teammate, managed to score one single point to get some points for the team, at least, on the board to start off. But yeah, we're going to have to try and bounce back now at Qatar. And to be fair, it's a good round to do it at with a sprint race also. So we could score points twice on the Saturday and the Sunday. But yeah, I mean, in terms of durability and addressing that engine failure, we do have durability upgrades on the way. We're working our way through it. Of course, we've always had the mantra of just making the car as quick as possible, and we'll kind of worry about the actual durability issues if and when they come. But maybe now is time to start maybe pouring some attention into that side of the car just to make sure we're not left frustrated. But it's just one engine failure. It could be like the only one the whole season. You just never know, really. So we'll just carry on as we are. We need to wait for those durability upgrades to come in before we can do some more. And in terms of other upgrades coming in, we have a tire upgrade that's come in, and also 2 aerodynamic upgrades, which take us right to where Red Bull are on the R&D performance chart. This is crazy. So if we want to be in a situation to bounce back from an engine failure in the first round, this is it. Being technically the best car on the grid overall, just about ahead of Red Bull going into Qatar. Aston Martin, Ferrari very close. McLaren have made some good upgrades to leapfrog Mercedes and Haas in the performance chart, and Alpine and Williams staying close together with Sauber and AlphaTauri bringing up the rear. So that's going to be a very tough fight in the midfield with McLaren, Mercedes, and Haas. Obviously, we saw last episode Aston Martin didn't perform too well, to be fair. So although they're technically there with Ferrari, who knows what their kind of pace will be. But I'm hoping that the race pace we showed around Melbourne up until the engine failure will translate into pace around Qatar. Obviously, in Season 1, Qatar was a pretty hectic race with a lot of tyre wear, some last-minute pit stops, a last lap puncher for us. So yeah, some not so happy memories, but at the same time it was entertaining nonetheless. And I must say, coming back to this circuit so early in the season, although a bit odd, is actually really great, because it really gives us a good indicator of how much the car has come on since Season 1. And the car infinitely just feels so much more balanced and actually sticking to the road, I must say, over one lap around this circuit. We go for 2 consecutive laps in a row, improving on the second to get us up into 4th place there. We're going to end the session in P13 because others improved quite a fair bit, but I think obviously the track is evolving through the session. We didn't bother to go at the end of Q1, but I think back-to-back those consecutive laps felt much better as I gained a bit of confidence and kind of just got a rhythm around the circuit. And it means going into Q2, the first sector felt great, second sector trying to be as aggressive as we can with the turn-ins on the curbs and trying to go flat out at some of these high-speed sections where the car is now feeling a lot more planted. It's a bit more responsive on the front end as well. And then through the final corner, getting on power as early as we can. DRS, it's a long run to the line, but this is going to be a pretty solid lap across the line, P1, and we end Q2 in P1. So massive amount of confidence here in that Q2 session. Unfortunately, Daniel Ricciardo again gets knocked out in Q2. Our old teammate Piastri as well joins him in P11 to 13. So that's a bit unfortunate. Ricciardo couldn't quite extract the time. Aston Martin look a bit quicker around here with both Albon and Alonso getting to the top 10, so that might be a big reason as to why those guys were knocked out. So maybe Aston Martin are finally going to show their hand. Maybe, you know, Australia just didn't really suit their car that much, and this one will. But for us, first flying lap. Let's see what it's going to be. I don't think it's that great, to be honest, because we did go a little bit wide in that sector 1. You saw in that first flyer. Second flying lap, a chance to make amends. We gained about 2/10 alone in the first 2 corners. We're still keeping on to about 4/10 through the last corner. We lose some time. We're down to 3/10. That wasn't a great last corner for us, and this may be a minimal improvement from P9 up to, I think it's going to be P7 on the road. From Q2 to now, that's a bit disappointing, but you can see in terms of lap times, it's more the fact that everyone else just sped up so much in Q3, as we've seen a few times before. You know, the AI can just finally really get into another gear in the last part of qualifying, and Carlos Sainz, the man who won the Qatar GP in Season 1 last year, is on pole position for the sprint race. Alonso, though, alongside him, showing the proper true pace, maybe, of the Aston Martin, and both Red Bulls, surprisingly, down the order. Horrendous time for the team that was top and in Australia and got the 1-2. So, after, you know, a first solid race for them, could it be anyone's game here at Qatar in a very promising way for not just this race, but also onwards for the championship? The sprint for us is going to be a great chance to try and set up a much better grid slot for Sunday's race, but I'm hoping, like in that first round of this season, that our quali pace is a bit slower than our race pace, and we can progress up from P7 as we go now to 5 red lights for the sprint race here in Qatar. Lights out and away we go. Really, really slow getaway for Hamilton and Russell. Both Mercedes have had an awful start into turn 1. Sainz leads the way. Alonso second. Lando Norris has charged forwards, as well as, I think, Verstappen behind. Massive snap of oversteer as Hamilton is side by side with us. And in the end of it, we did gain some positions, but we lost them all as we're back down to P8 then after that snap that we just about managed to catch. It could have been really bad news for us. That could have been easily a spin out or either some contact with Lewis Hamilton. And speaking of, we are making some contact with the Mercedes car because we're pushing him through these corners as we send it down the inside. A little bit of jockeying for position, but ultimately we overtake the Silver Arrow and get up into 7th place. You may have noticed we're on the mediums because I have learnt my lesson from Season 1, and I think the mediums are the better race tyre by the time we get to the 10th lap of this sprint race. Right now the softs may be doing the work, and they are doing the work for Daniel Ricciardo, our teammate, who is charged up from P13 to P8 in 3 laps, and we're going to let him by on purpose because right now, as I was saying, he is on the softs. So right now, he'll be quicker and he can pull me along with DRS from lap 3 onwards here. And then eventually on lap 5, now he's pulled us in. We're within 1 second of Leclerc. Now I'm going to re-overtake him. And right about now, lap 6 to 10, this is when the mediums are going to start to be the better race tyre. So we've tactically used our teammate just to keep us within this shout of the top 6 ahead of us. You know, you can see Leclerc, Norris, Bottas all nose to tail ahead of us. Bottas doing a fantastic job in the McLaren to be still ahead of the Red Bull and Ferrari at this stage, as Leclerc is a bit of a sitting duck as we use plenty of battery in the DRS to get the overtake done on lap 7. But yeah, very surprised Norris has not been able to pass Bottas, although Lando has also chosen mediums like myself, but clearly the McLaren is holding on, and obviously the McLaren has some upgrades this weekend, so clearly working quite well for the Flying Finn, and it's working so well that he's pulled away from the Red Bull, and now Lando vulnerable to us through turns 1. We get the elbow out and we're up into P5, and the Red Bull is left to fight the Ferrari behind us. So we're making good progress now after a bit of an iffy first lap from P8 up to P5, and I reckon we could go on to get Bottas and maybe even look at that top 3, which, by the way, right now, the leader is Fernando Alonso. He's overtaken Sainz, Russell's even overtaken Sainz, and Alonso leads in the Aston Martin as we make a huge dive on Bottas. It was oh so close to his rear right tyre, but committed as ever because we've only got a lap and a bit to go, and I think we can get one more position in this race on the last lap of the Grand Prix into the last 2 corners. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin is going to win the sprint race here in Qatar. We managed to get Carlos Sainz, the pole sitter, into the final corner to get up into P3, but it's a very surprising top 3 there. Fernando Alonso showing, okay, maybe the Aston Martin does actually have some pace here, and they've finally shown their hand. Russell, he's done insane to be up in P2 after the performance, and the race pace Mercedes didn't show in Australia there. And, I think we got our head down, basically, and finally the medium tyre was coming into play. Those guys on softs were, losing some pace, and were able to get up to P3. And that is not just some good points, 6 points in this sprint race. That means it's the second row of the grid for the full Grand Prix tomorrow. And look at the rest of the race order. Verstappen down in P10. He was stuck in traffic. Hamilton P11. Some big names down the order. Ricciardo is even ahead of them. So that's really great for him to start in P8 for tomorrow's race. So all round, a lot of winners in that sprint race and some losers. And especially for the championship being blown open a little bit after that 1-2 dominance by Red Bull. That's good stuff, and may it continue into the race. And if we show the same sort of pace, I think we could be fighting maybe Russell and Alonso for those top positions. Let's go to the grid.
Welcome back to Qatar and the Lusail International Circuit. There's a long history of two-wheeled motorsport action here, but in 2021, Lewis Hamilton won out as part of an epic battle that year with Max Verstappen. But who will win out tonight? We're back here in Lusail for a track that's 3.34 miles long. There are 16 turns around its unique three-pronged shape and just a single DRS zone out of turn 16. It's fast and it's flowing, and there's a good overtaking opportunity with DRS down the long straight and into turn 1. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Fernando Alonso lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have the owner driver, Sainz, Bottas, Norris, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Albon, Verstappen, Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Gasly, Joe, the owner driver, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Sargent, Stroll, Perez, and Liam Lawson. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track. Anthony Davidson is with me once again to take you through today's action. And we have plenty of twists and turns to come over the next hour or so, I'm sure. Let's start by looking at Fernando Alonso.
Well, it was a really impressive lap in qualifying to get pole position, but are they going to be able to hold on to the lead into the first corner with so many quick starters around them? And let's see who's able to keep their tyres in that temperature sweet spot early on. You've got a great tyre warmer underneath your right foot, and the drivers need to make the most of that on the formation lap, lest they see themselves skating wide at turn 1 on cold rubber.
I think we've got a very intriguing Qatar GP coming up, not only because of the pecking order on this starting grid, but knowing how Season 1 went with the massive tyre wear. Is the entire grid going to learn about maybe committing to the two-stop? We start on mediums, but you've got Alonso and Sainz starting on softs. Now, Sainz didn't start on softs last year, and he went on to win on a one-stop, but he's now committed to the softs, so maybe we see a few people committing to the two-stop early with Alonso there as well on pole position in the Aston Martin, now powered by Honda. This is going to be a very interesting race and may just answer a few more questions, but because we didn't use any softs in the sprint race, we have a new set to use at the end of this one, so I think we're going to commit early to the two-stop as we go to 5 red lights for the full Qatar GP, and the pole sitter doesn't get away at all. Alonso has bottled it off the line so slow, even slower than Hamilton did in the sprint race. He blocked us basically as we went off the line, and we're now down 3 positions because of it. We had to take avoiding action around the outside of him so slowly. So it's Russell in the lead, Sainz up to second place on those softs, a lot of this on mediums though around him, Bottas, Norris included, and me as Verstappen tries to make a move. We block him off by going defensive, but Verstappen has jumped up from outside the top 10, I think it was, or P10 up to P6, so the championship leader making some good progress on the opening lap and defiant about trying to maybe maintain his championship lead after this round is over. But his teammate Lando Norris up in 4th place, actually struggling to finish the move on Bottas. Again, the McLaren of the Finn showing it's actually got some great pace with those upgrades into this race weekend. But it's the Silver Arrow, Russell, that leads the way, surprisingly, from Carlos Sainz, who again is just showing he goes well around Losail, it would seem, as we now move on to the end of lap 1, on to 2, and Norris is looking very likely to actually overtake the Finn. Finally couldn't quite do it on the opening lap, but now the run into turn 1, and Sainz as well going for a move. Lots of overtakes happening here onto lap 2, and Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari on the softs into the lead, and the Red Bull looking to try and snatch third place. He has done it, but that's exactly what Sainz needs to do, because he's on softs. He's going to pit a lot earlier than everyone else, and he needs to make the most of the softer compound, as well as our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, to my surprise, started on the softs as well. He's in P8, where he qualified for this Sunday race after the sprint, and he's now gone and overtaken the man who won the sprint race, Fernando Alonso, falling away in the full Grand Prix on heavy fuel, surprisingly, as we make light work of Valtteri Bottas. Although saying that, the McLaren sticks with us through the next left and right, and actually it's a good run, and the Finn sends it down the inside. We have to give him some room, because his nose is there. That could have been a bit of contact and a proper incident. We give him the space, and we're still going to hold on to P4 and put a car in between us and Verstappen, but the top 3 is still Sainz, Russell and Norris, all pretty close to each other, and I reckon Norris might try and make some moves in that Red Bull, make the most of his teammate being down the order, as on lap 5, Ricciardo finally gets the job done on Alonso. He tried before, didn't quite work out. Verstappen also trying his hand at Bottas, but Bottas actually quite defiant and keeps the Dutchman behind, so it's still the Finn from Verstappen, Ricciardo, Alonso, Leclerc and Piastri is the top 10 right now. But lap 7, rather than catching the top 3, I'm starting to struggle on these mediums, on the heavier fuel. Maybe not as good as it was in the sprint as a tyre compound for us, and we're being now overtaken by both drivers. It's a 3-wide moment between Verstappen, Bottas and ourselves. A little bit of contact with the Finn, the McLaren on the outside, the Red Bull is already overtaken us. We're trying to hang around the outside, but Verstappen gets the elbows out. We go off circuit a little bit just to try and keep it going in a straight line, but annoyingly we've lost one position. I really thought we could try and get both there, but Verstappen was pretty good with his defense, whilst his teammate then on lap 8 is going for that move, like I said, on Russell. The Ferrari moving across to go defensive. It's going to be 3 wide between Ferrari, Merc and Red Bull, and Russell on the outside is actually going to overtake Sainz and defend against the Red Bull, and instead of losing a position, Russell gains the lead as Sainz gets overtaken by both of them. I think his softs are wearing out. I think that's got to be the case there, the way that Norris even went round the outside of him, as we now overtake Verstappen to get back into P4. We go very defensive to be very annoying to him, just to try and hold this position, because right now I don't see us catching the top 3 in this stage of the race, so I may as well just try and solidify this P4 and become a nuisance to the cars behind me. Verstappen, Bottas, even now Leclerc, Ricciardo even catching up on the minimap. You can see as on lap 9, there you go, Sainz is in, and that's a lot earlier than any of us will come on the mediums, apart from me, because I've committed to this 2-stop. I reckon some of these guys may still be floating the idea of trying a 1-stop, but like last season, I think they're going to have to make a late pit stop. So instead of doing that, I'd rather commit early and basically get an undercut twice on this pit stop and the second one. And you can see, to be fair, on the bottom right hand side, my tyre icon's orange. The tyre wear was a lot higher in the full Grand Prix here, I think just due to the heavier fuel loads pushing the car down and making it a bit more abrasive out there. So we're onto the hard compounded tyre, 2.5 stop, not too bad, and looking to get an undercut now on these hard tyres, because if those guys are all maybe floating the idea of 1-stop, they won't be coming in until, yeah, well, here you go, 3 laps later onto lap 13. They're now in, and we overtake all of them while setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix on the hards in still pretty heavy fuel conditions. So the pace is actually pretty damn promising on these hard tyres as we get up back into P4. But up the road, look at where Russell just came out. 4 seconds, so we've gained about a second there on the top 3. But Russell, having pit last out of them 3, is in 3rd place now. Sainz has retaken the lead, having made the early pit stop onto the hards. Norris pit earlier than Russell and jumped him, so you can see just how powerful the undercut is, because anyone who's pitting before is making the jump on the person they're fighting. You know, the same can be said of Piastri here. He's legitimately here, by the way. Oscar Piastri in P5. He jumped Verstappen by making a really early pit stop, but now he's just been overtaken by the Red Bull. But Piastri's leapfrogged about 5 people because he was down in like P10 or 11, as we now see a great little scrap between the Sauber of Zhou Guanyu, Bottas and Leclerc. A lot of 3 wide moments happening in Season 2 here of Qatar as we focus on the Aston Martins of Albon Alonso, P12 and 13. Where on earth did Aston Martin's pace go? Where did Alonso's pace go from the sprint as Ricciardo makes a tasty move on Ocon, his former Renault teammate, up into P8 as we now pit again on lap 20. Not really much happened that second stint. All you saw of my POV was us pitting, setting a fast lap, and then pretty much we just pounded the laps round until this lap, and it was time to come in for that second stop on a brand spanking new set of soft tyres. Now, I still maintain a lot of these guys on hards who are staying out, I think they're going to, again, try and see if they can do a one-stop. But I think if they've learnt anything from Season 1, they're going to commit earlier to not a second last lap pit stop onto the softs. I've committed so early, I'm giving myself a full proper stint on the softs here, 8 laps to be exact. It was a slow stop with the front right going on a bit slow, so we're going to have to try and outdrive that a little bit on this outlap, but you're going to see the pace of these softs is going to be electric compared to those hard tyres as we're catching up now to a pack of 3 cars. Hulkenberg comes in, so we're not going to get the chance to overtake the 2 Saubers on track, and they're both in. Piastri's in, so have I actually pulled the trigger? For a lot of people, Piastri's come in after I came in. Is that going to be the same for other cars? Are they going to see that I've come in? And just like in real life, sometimes that forces everyone's hands to then react and make their own pit stops. We'll have to see as we now make quick work of Lance Stroll on the inside. And versus, you know, the field spread's not too large here, so these cars do have some good pace usually, but we're just flying through them because we're on 2 compound softer tyres and their hards are wearing out, just as mine were towards the end of the stint. We overtake Sargent, try to make a little dive on Sonoda. He's a bit annoying and holds us up a little bit through the long right-hander, but we're committed to this next quick right and then left and get up into P14, and we go to a new lap, lap 23. We'll overtake 2 more cars. 2 Alpines are in. Magnussen stays out for now. Sainz has made a pit stop, I think, as we said another fast lap of the Grand Prix. But Sainz has come in. He's coming off the hards onto a set of mediums. So Sainz has basically done the reverse of my strategy and a lot of people's strategies. Medium, hard, softs. He's done softs, hards, mediums now, as Alonso's in, Hamilton's in. So looks like, unlike Season 1, everyone has woken up and is committing to the 2 stop. Still a little bit late in the day, you know. Lap 25 means you've only got 4 laps on new sets of soft tyres, so it's still pretty late. And even later in the day is our teammate Ricciardo leading the way. Bit of a glory run for Rick Bobby because he's going to come in as well eventually. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I kind of low-key hope Ricciardo was going to try and stick it out and somehow try and win the race on old hards, but he comes in eventually. And so, after all of that, Sainz is the one in first place. Albon is in second, but he's yet to pit off his hards. So it's Norris effectively in a net P2, Russell P3, I'll be up to P4. Piastri has actually legitimately stayed behind me and is gapped a lot of time to the cars behind him, because you've got Sargent in the Haas up to P7. Ricciardo's going to come out behind Verstappen, Hamilton, etc. Outside the top 10. And Verstappen is left to fight Leclerc for P9. So Verstappen did overtake Piastri before in the race. So I don't know what's happened to him, but he's really not had a great time around Losail here. And he's dropped off massively in pace as we now watch onto lap 27. Russell trying to swap positions with the Red Bull. The silver arrow on the the outside. Lando will get the elbows out, but who's going to commit the most to the next left-hander? Bit awkward. You kind of let off throttle, go down to 5th gear, get on power early as you dare, and Russell is looking to still make the move on the outside. These two are neck and neck for the entirety of Sector 1. What an insane battle for P2 and 3 respectively between the Merc and the Red Bull, and Russell is going to come out on top in 2nd place. Lap 27 on to 28, the second last lap of the Grand Prix, and Ricciardo, having made that real late pit stop, it means he's got fresher tyres than the Red Bull, and Ricciardo overtakes his former Red Bull teammate to get up into 8th place. So some real good late moves in this race, and Ricciardo actually maybe had a thing going for him, pitting that late off the hard tyres. As on towards lap 29, the last lap of the Grand Prix, and just a little note here as Ocon goes out the race, we've got some massive wear on our ICE, and this is very odd. We never had this level of wear on the ICE in Season 1. This is only the 2nd race, technically 3rd race if you include the sprint, and there's already over 60% wear, so that's a little bit concerning. So has the durability of the Honda power unit changed from Seasons 1 to Season 2? We're going to have to find out later on in the year, but Verstappen is getting absolutely swarmed. His tyres must be shot. I think maybe those softs he went on to were an old set, because Albon and Bottas overtake him in a 3-wide moment to go P9 and 10, and Verstappen, the championship leader going into this race, is down and out of the points in P11. Piastri's flown high to P5 and actually caught up to me. So my former teammate really showing maybe we should have kept him. But at the same time, Ricciardo has been improving. P8 for him. I think that's really solid, looking at where he was earlier in the race. But this is the man of the hour, the man of this circuit. Carlos Sainz has a 100% Grand Prix record here for us in My Team Career Mode at the Qatar GP. He won in Season 1. He wins again in Season 2. Sainz comes across the line to win here in Losail for Ferrari. Russell and Norris 2nd and 3rd. Very strong race from Russell, it must be said, in the Mercedes. And also, to be fair, from Lando as well, to recover from how low the Red Bulls were, and really in comparison to where Verstappen is. And for us, that's a really solid P4, especially after the struggles in the first stint. I think we did really well to come back in that last one just to solidify that P4, and thankfully for us the pressure was off because Verstappen just fell away out of nowhere. So solid race.
And under the desert night sky, they win the Qatar Grand Prix. And what a performance it was. Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
Well, time management probably played quite a large role in the outcome of this one. As ever, it's not just about speed, it's all about maintaining that speed consistently over a stint, over a race distance. So being able to keep up the lap times while still being smooth on the controls and gentle on the tyres, that's really where the race was won today.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
So I've got to say apologies to Ferrari. I really wrote them off in the pre-season video going into the first round, but now here they are. Sainz has won Qatar again, and I think he leads the championship now because Verstappen obviously scored 0 points, and Sainz was on the podium in Australia, as well as Lando. So Lando, I think, will climb up to P2 then. So Verstappen takes a big hit to his championship lead there, and yeah, question marks over where his pace went in the second and third stint, really. And some real big winners of Russell doing so well in the Merc to be up in P2, whereas his teammate Hamilton was P8. So are we seeing Lewis Hamilton having won that 8th World Championship just showing a little bit of lack of motivation now as Russell drags the Merc up to P2? Also, kudos to Piastri from going from P12 to P5. Bottas had a nightmare. He was running P3 at one point and he finished down in P10. And our teammate Ricciardo, he finishes where he qualified, P8, but at one point he was down the order outside the point, so I think he's done well to recover there, and I'm slowly seeing he is improving. So eventually I think Ricciardo could turn into a very good teammate for us. Right now Piastri, our old teammate, does seem immediately the better driver, but I think Ricciardo will come good. Obviously, remember, his focus levels have to gain after a couple of races, so just give it some time. But there you go, Sainz leads the way, Norris second, Russell third, Verstappen down to P4 on the championship. We climb up to P4 on the Constructors, which is good, but you can see there's still a good old, 20-point gap to the top 3, and that's what we're aiming for. So we need to do better. We need Ricciardo to be closer to us, and then we need to get that elusive first podium of the season. It was maybe on at Melbourne. It wasn't really on today. Let's hope maybe the third round at Bahrain could give us that first podium of the year, just to really kick us off properly this season. But a fantastically entertaining Qatar GP in the sprint and in the full Grand Prix. Loads of 3 wide moments into turn 1. Really great to see. Guys, if you have enjoyed it, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.